So a major sticking point here is the honoring of ICE detainers. On the radio this morning, I heard the person in charge of a major prison that serves the Minneapolis area saying she will only release prisoners to ICE if ICE has a signed judicial warrant. She says she won't accept a warrant issued by the DHS itself, aka an ICE detainer. Now with us to explore is Cooper Smith, Director of Homeland Security and Immigration at the America First Policy Institute. Cooper, great to see you. Thanks for coming on this afternoon. The prison I brought up just now says it's simply following the law. Should ICE be obtaining judicial warrants more often?
Well, ICE both uses judicial warrants and administrative warrants, and I think that list of 10 demands that you were just reporting on a moment ago from Chuck Schumer and Jeffries basically would abolish ICE as we know it. And included in those 10 demands are the requirement that they use judicial warrants, which, if that were to go through, ICE would have no ability to remove the 15 or 20 million people who came here under Joe Biden. So I think that particular demand, along with a few others, are going to be non-starters for John Thune and the Republican Party. And like I said, I think that list would effectively abolish ICE as we know it. And it seems to me that their true goal here is to end immigration enforcement altogether.
Well, Cooper, go into this for us. How exactly would requiring them to get judicial warrants impact them to that degree?
Sure, because then ICE would have to go to a federal judge every time they wanted to conduct an operation. And again, we're talking about a scale of a problem here, 15, 20, potentially more millions of people who came here, especially under Joe Biden's term with open borders policies. So just due to the scale of the problem created here, if you were to require ICE to only use judicial warrants, it would effectively neuter the agency and render them completely useless.
Well, on that point, critics of the deportation operation say, well, this is the law. Where exactly do we stand on that?
Well, yeah, the law also says if you have no legal right to be here, then you should be removed. So I find it really ironic from the left who's saying that this is immigration law. Well, if they read Title 8 of the U.S. Code, they would know that entering the country illegally is a crime. If you come again, it's a felony. Unfortunately, the Department of Justice doesn't have the resources to prosecute all of those cases. But back to the reporting that you just did about Tom Homan, when we talk about smart enforcement, we're talking about sanctuary jurisdictions. Of course, ICE operates in 100% of the country in all 50 states all day, every day. And I think what the administration is doing here is trying a different approach as it relates to sanctuary jurisdictions, which, in my opinion, should be ended completely. But unfortunately, that would take an act of Congress. And as we know, they can't even seem to pass a budget in relation to DHS at the moment.
Well, Cooper, on that point, as you said, Homan said 700 agents have been withdrawn from Minneapolis. Democrats on their side are calling for more targeted operations. Do you expect major changes there in Minneapolis?
Well, I do. I think Tom Homan and the president said, after the last couple of weeks that they need a new approach and they need smart enforcement. They need to go into a safe jail setting to get these violent criminal aliens out. I think it's also important to remember that, as you reported on, 4,000 criminal illegal aliens have already been removed from Minneapolis since Metro Surge started. But going back to the beginning of the Trump administration, we're talking about 10,000 people who've been removed from that state. So, I don't think we're going to see a huge change in those numbers. I think the numbers will continue to tick up. I think mass deportation will continue, and that's what the president has indicated.
And I just want to note, some of the people lifted out of Minneapolis during this operation have committed terrible crimes. I think oftentimes this gets overlooked. Staying on the point, the president said his deportation operation maybe could have used a softer touch. He did say you still need to be tough. What do you think that means? Particularly, where do you think this lighter touch may come in?
Yeah, again, going back to my original point, I think what they're doing here, when he says softer touch, it's in relation to sanctuary jurisdiction policies, right? Going back to the beginning of the Trump administration, they've been trying to get rid of sanctuary cities, either by taking their resources from them or outright banning them altogether. Congress has been working on that as well. But while that works through the courts and through Congress, what the president and Tom Homan are saying is, okay, maybe that particular model didn't work in a sanctuary jurisdiction. Perhaps we need to negotiate more, come to an agreement. And my hope is what I think will happen is if Tom Homan is able to successfully negotiate with local sheriffs, with the mayor, with the governor, perhaps that can serve as a model for other sanctuary states and other sanctuary jurisdictions, whether that's California and Illinois, New Jersey, New Mexico, other states who are against the president's immigration priorities, but who nonetheless need to comply with federal law and should.
And Cooper, Homan says that over there in Minnesota, that local officials are open to cooperating more with ICE on these. But when you listen to some of the local officials, it doesn't seem so clear-cut. Are we waiting, for example, for this to play through the courts? Particularly, I want to go back to original point on these ICE detainers and the legality of actually having states and local authorities enforce them. Is there going to be a watershed moment here?
I mean, potentially. I think you could see it work its way through the courts, but I'm not really sure. Again, I don't imagine that Congress is going to agree to this. This is not going to be a possibility for the Republican Party to come to the table on judicial warrant reform as it relates to ICE. Again, I think members of Congress realize that President Trump was elected overwhelmingly on a simple promise, and that was to deport people here who have no legal right to be here, especially those with a criminal record, gang members, rapists, human traffickers, and the like. And that's what the American people want. And additionally, I'd point to recent polling that just came out from Harvard-Harris saying that 73% of all Americans want criminal aliens deported. 73%. So all this kind of gusto about, the president's poll numbers are tanking on this issue is just totally nonsensical. The American people want criminal aliens removed, and I think reform to judicial warrants is not going to be on the table.
Interesting. Cooper, finally, Democrats also demanding that ICE agents show ID and don't wear face masks. Republicans say could put their safety at risk. But how is this demand any different from, say, regular law enforcement and their requirements?
Well, I think there's two issues here. One is on body cameras, which you've seen both parties have come together and said, we're going to get $20 million to ICE for body cameras. They're going to roll it out, as Secretary Noem said, starting in Minneapolis. Also important to remember that ICE has used body cameras. They've been exploring them and paying for them for the last 4 or 5 years. They just needed more funding. They're going to get that. As it relates to face masks, again, these agents are facing an 8,000% increase in death threats against them, according to the Department of Homeland Security. 8,000%. And it's not just the agent. It's unfortunately their families, it's their children who are getting involved in the doxing. So I think they do need to be protected. They do need to have that ability to keep the masks on. And I don't imagine that Republicans are going to change their mind on that issue.
It's just incredible what's happening. Cooper Smith at the America First Policy Institute. Cooper, thank you.